I don't think it's out of pocket to say that Michelle Pfeiffer is probably one of, if not the most fondly remembered Catwoman of all time. I don't know that any other woman who has ever worn the mask or cracked the whip has been referenced nearly as much since her brief time in the role. Actresses who have taken on the role after her have even credited her performance as a major influence in theirs. We're talking about a character who was so beloved by test audiences that the studio had to go back and film an additional scene confirming that this character survived, just because of the negative reaction that was given to her otherwise untimely demise. And that was done on such short notice that Michelle Pfeiffer wasn't even able to step back in to fill out the catsuit. Like with all pre-established source material that Tim Burton gets his hands on, the character was changed, though not completely. Whereas Danny DeVito's Penguin felt far too removed from the original character's origins, feeling less like a rendition of that rogue and more like a wholly original concept, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman is different enough to be distinct, but not so different that she's unidentifiable. There's plenty of common ground between this reimagining of the femme fatale and the ones from comics and TV that preceded this, but there's also a lot of deviation and divergence. They compare just about as much as they contrast. Her origin story here is original, though elements from it would go on to become the backstory of other Catwomen over the years. Being a bit socially awkward, Selina Kyle is a loner, and not one by choice. She's not thought highly of by her peers. Actually, she's usually not thought of at all, and she's incredibly frumpy, by which I mean she wears glasses. Apparently that's all you needed to be unattractive by 90s standards. The few relationships she actually does have with others seem to fail and fall apart before they're even given a chance to prosper. She has absolutely no life to speak of whatsoever outside of her line of work. Since this portrayal, you can copy and paste this exact description and use it for several other big screen villains. This kinda set a precedent in comic book movies. A lot of heroes' rogues galleries share some DNA with this particular performance. Edward Nygma in Batman Forever, Pamela Isley in Batman and Robin, Guy Pearce in Iron Man 3, Jamie Foxx in Amazing Spider-Man 2, Kristen Wiig in Wonder Woman 1984. The list goes on. I definitely haven't covered all of them. Each iteration being more over the top than the last, and each one being worse off for it. This performance created a trope that has really only truly worked effectively once, maybe twice, but it was never done as well as it was with the first one. This performance has constantly been imitated, but it's never truly been duplicated. A lot of, if not all of the examples given, are not looked back fondly upon. Yet Pfeiffer is still beloved and considered to be by many the greatest Catwoman that has ever been put to screen. Pfeiffer Selina is a good-natured, well-meaning individual who is constantly overlooked by the world around her, and whenever she does receive any sort of attention, it's overwhelmingly negative. Feeling put out by everyone around her, she becomes put off by all those that surround her, losing faith in humanity, but finding a new faith within herself. This isn't exactly the case for other Catwomen, as typically, more often than not, the character is the same with or without the mask. The cowl is really a formality. Catwoman is very rarely vulnerable, let alone this in peril. However, this really only exists to create the contrast between the two halves of this whole person. In terms of the characterization of Selina Kyle, this is a little off-brand. However, in terms of the characterization of Catwoman, this is extremely on-brand. It's amazing how she manages to fit so much personality into such a tight catsuit. She has the right attitude for the part. As Catwoman, instinctual fear has been replaced with absolute confidence in every given situation. Not all too dissimilar from the series' titular character. She comes off as larger than life. Every scene with her almost feels like an event. Like any good Catwoman performance, she's unhinged and unpredictable. You never know if you're seeing her break through her bad nature and reveal her true self, or if it's just another facade, another trick, yet another means of manipulation. And at times, it seems like she doesn't know either. In a way, Selina is sort of stuck in limbo, torn between the person she was and the one that she's become, desperately trying to get back to who she used to be, but finds herself unable to let go of the grudge that made her who she is today, taking on traits to protect herself and take vengeance on her own tormentors. In this sense, that's definitely a deviation in terms of depiction. Traditionally, Catwoman can't be tamed, but this Catwoman seems unable to subdue herself. Selina here is much more reckless than she's ever been before. She's a tortured soul. And while I said that Catwoman seems to have control of any given situation, Selina Kyle doesn't even have control of herself. Her dueling dual identities are constantly in conflict, very rarely meeting in the middle and instead continually clashing. Tim Burton's Catwoman is admittedly a lot darker than a lot of other Catwoman iterations. While Catwoman has always been at the very least a little bit jaded, this Catwoman is downright cynical. It's a much more twisted version of the feline femme fatale. Unlike the original character, she's not doing bad to achieve good. This isn't just a means for an end. She's just bad for the sake of being bad, and it seems that she truly enjoys the bad things she does, taking great pleasure in each nefarious scheme. Both on screen and in panels, Selina Kyle is a complex character with a constantly shifting moral compass. Except in the comics, she does bad things for a good cause. She's either protecting vulnerable women or advocating for animals, acting as the voice of the voiceless. In contrast, this Catwoman is not nearly as much of an anti-hero. As a matter of fact, I would say she's more of a full-fledged villain. She isn't out for justice, she's seeking revenge. Well-deserved revenge, but revenge nonetheless. When she does actually save others, she almost does so begrudgingly, taking her time to further victimize the victim, only taking mercy on the woman to stand up for her in a similar situation where she could not stand up for herself. This dark side isn't just sprung on randomly. Even before her literal fall from disgrace, her dark side is displayed in passing. Though it isn't until her eventual death and rebirth that this cynicism floats to the surface and takes center stage, becoming her primary personality trait.
You got kind of a dark side, don't you?
No darker than yours, Bruce.
I wouldn't say that this was a mask that she hides behind. It's an extension of herself. One side of a whole character, and a side that eventually takes over her whole character. She uses an arsenal of tricks to achieve her goals, using seduction as a means of distraction or in an effort to gain accomplices. She's almost like Poison Ivy, just minus the pheromones. She gets the job done on her own, by having other people get the job done for/with her, using her feminine wiles to get what she wants, and at times turning predators into her prey. It's actually kind of a wonder why she looks for the backup that she does, because it's not like she necessarily needs it. She's fully capable of handling herself, clawing and scratching her way out of every scenario, managing to go toe-to-toe with the Dark Knight on a couple of occasions. To say that she could hold her own is a bit of an understatement. Unlike her comic book counterpart, this version of the villain did possess some sort of superpowers, as she's shown to survive various encounters with the Grim Reaper throughout, being shot on 4 occasions and pushed to her death on 3 separate occasions, as well as somehow surviving self-appointed electrocution. This is described as being her 9 lives, which is kind of weird, as A, cats don't actually have 9 lives, and B, most people only have 1. So how she managed to lose about 8 of them in the span of just over 2 hours is beyond me. I don't know, maybe if you have more than 1 life to live, you don't value them quite as much. Her death and rebirth at the paws of strays also gave her cat-like abilities and agility, almost akin to what the spider did for Peter Parker. This Catwoman doesn't feel like a woman in a catsuit, she feels like a legitimate Catwoman. Though sometimes maybe to a fault. Sure, Selina's always had an affinity for cats and acting out in ways that they do, but I don't think that she'd go as far as cleaning herself in front of company. I mean, what's next? You gonna have her cough up a... Alright, we're just gonna move on because I don't care to remember that any further. Despite going too far at times, the role has still benefited from the wildcat antics. Ultimately, Selina Kyle is a good person who's been wronged, with each new betrayal only further burying her in the darkness that created her, with Batman and Bruce being the only glimmer of light in her life. Well, him and her cats, I guess. Bruce gets to know Selina and sees past her wrongdoings, recognizing the similarities the two share.
We're the same. Split. Right down the center.
Michelle Pfeiffer deserves all the praise in the world for her time in the part. A lot was asked of this actress. Not only was she asked to portray a larger-than-life sex symbol, but she was also basically asked to become a badass overnight. We're talking past the point of putting on a good performance here. The suit that she wore was so tight that she actually had to be vacuum sealed in it. All those whip cracks in the movie and a lot of her fight scenes and acrobatics, a lot of that is actually just Michelle Pfeiffer, who had to go through vigorous training in order to successfully do what would now be done by camera cuts, extras, and body doubles, and maybe a splash of CGI for good luck. All her. The bird that was flying out of her mouth in that one scene? Not a special effect. They actually put a live finch in her mouth. It's real. It's all real. You gotta give it to this woman. She was all in. It's no wonder why so many people still today consider Michelle Pfeiffer the definitive Catwoman. Despite whatever differences there were between the character from the script and the character that was drawn on the page, there's a lot more common ground between the two. Michelle Pfeiffer embodied the character. That is why, to me and so many other people, she will always be Catwoman. And if you like this video and would be interested in seeing me cover some of the other Catwomen brought to the big screen, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
"We're safe, Kathleen."
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.